The attempts to thwart Trump using lawfare have not worked, causing Rachel Maddow to go into a spiral, saying that we need a magic spell or a magic wand, but there isn't one, so we just have to vote for Biden. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan says that we literally need the return of Christ to save our culture. So who is the real devil at work in our international psyche and in particular in American politics? Is it Donald Trump or is it the entire damn establishment? Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on this voyage to truth and freedom. Remember, you can support our movement by clicking the link in the description, getting an additional video every week, often on controversial subjects that we wouldn't dare broadcast anywhere else for fear of censure and attack, as well as getting to participate in interviews with brilliant journalists and political figures like Bobby Kennedy, Vandana Shiva, Kali Means, a whole host of others. You will love it, particularly at a time where there seem to be decreasing options for legitimate expression of political opinion within the mainstream. Rachel Maddow has simply said there's no magic wand that can stop Trump. The Supreme Court has been co-opted and bought out. The only way to stop Trump is to vote for Biden. She seems to neglect that this analysis, as well as urging us to take this course of action, neglects to mention or even observe that we are in a kind of global crisis, aren't we? With wars between Russia and Ukraine, an escalation of violence in Gaza that's stomach-turning to so many people in the world now, total loss of faith in Biden's administration, the feeling that we've just been mugged and hoodwinked by the pharmaceutical establishment. If it wasn't the opioid crisis, then many of the things that took place in the pandemic seem unreasonable. So is this urging to just hold your nose and shut your mouth and vote for Biden, who seems increasingly decrepit and hopeless, who's unable to keep his own promises and maybe even remember them, an indication that democracy itself is falling apart? Certainly the only card they're willing to play as we enter the white heat of election year is Trump is bad. Trump is bad. We've got some incredible journalism from Martin Gurri here, not to mention insights from Joe Rogan, who seems to suggest that we need nothing short of a kind of spiritual revolution, which is something we talk about on this channel a great deal. Not because we are harbingers or soothsayers, but because if you want a paradigm shift, if you're interested in genuinely new systems, you have to start considering new terrain, new territory, new psychic energy. So let's first of all have a look at Rachel Maddow's, what seems to me like hysteria posing as rationalism. Then we'll get into Joe Rogan's sort of prophetic cry for the return of Christ, literally, I'm not even joking. And then we'll look at Martin Gurri, the former CIA analyst who's been ahead of the curve on these matters for a long, long time. The first person that I heard observe left and right's over now, it's periphery versus centre. In ways like the British filmmaker Ad Curtis, one of those people who understands the broader, wider trends. So as we approach the white heat of an election, let's look at the key players and what's really required if we're interested in changing the world.
But I will just leave you with this.
Even the graphic says, pick one. Pick one. Don't ask any questions. Don't query why you might be so miserable, why you might feel so abandoned in society, why there are all these escalating wars, why technology increasingly seems to be used to monitor and control a population. Just pick one. Isn't that the fundamental problem with neoliberal democracy? That it doesn't really offer you anything and then becomes hysterical when you refuse to cooperate, when you start to ask questions, when you start to doubt the veracity and necessity of all these ongoing wars, indeed their legitimacy, particularly after the wars we've experienced in our lifetime, Iraq, Afghanistan. And then when people are asking questions in real time about the wars that the United States in particular are currently one way or another, through supply of weaponry or funding, involved in, people just want to obfuscate that and reduce it to pick one. Pick one. Well, a lot of people are saying, I know which one I'm going to pick, Donald Trump. And all their only answer to that is, ah!
There's no magic spell. There's no solution that is going to come, say, from the Supreme Court.
That also isn't the function of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court are meant to be the stewards of justice. People don't look to the Supreme Court and go, okay, hopefully these elderly people that are reassuringly diverse learned some Hogwarts stuff while they were wearing those outfits. It's meant to just be based on the law that's been written down by people. It isn't magic, and I don't think anyone expects magic from them.
They gave us that reminder today. After last week, they made sure we knew it in the first place when they somewhat inexplicably took action to delay all the Trump criminal trials.
Rachel Maddow there unconsciously compressing the word crime and Trump into one portmanteau, because that's what the media are attempting to do, to look at Trump as criminal in the same way as they look at the domestic population as criminal, the same way they deploy terrorist technologies against domestic populations in your country and mine. Note furthermore that Rachel Maddow is quite willing to dismiss the highest court in the land as delegitimate as soon as as it doesn't perform the function that the establishment wants it to perform. Isn't that the number one thing they criticize about Donald Trump? He's bad for our institutions. He doesn't respect law and order. Why? With his constant declaration of fake news, he ruins trust in the media. You can't do that. We're real journalists. We're serious. I went to a special school. We had wood-panelled walls in the buildings where I went to school. How dare you say that? And what happens the minute the Supreme Court doesn't do their bidding? Fake justice. Fake justice don't mean anything. They can't do magic spells.
There's no magic spell.
So, if the reason they hate Trump is because he's sort of uber or exterior to democratic institutions and procedures that are part of the heritage of the United States of America, and there's lots of books and it's all very important, if that's the problem with Trump is that he's iconoclastic and clumsy and crass and brash, then why is it when Trump's ascendancy continues, primarily because he's an anti-establishment candidate and everybody hates the media and everybody hates the government, you can feel it, we all know it, and they're unwilling to do anything about it because they can't do anything about it, what do? They attack the institution. Oh, it's just the Supreme Court. Look at them, the bloody idiots. Fake justice. Fake justice. Either it's wrong to trash these institutions or it isn't. Now, I know where I stand on that particular subject, but I don't know where the establishment stand on it, because one minute they say, oh, the Capitol, it's sacred. You can't say that about the media. Joe Rogan doesn't wear a tie. They can't have it both ways, and yet they want to have it both ways because they've got no principles, they've got no argument, all they've got is Trump.
There's no magic wand coming to stop this thing.
Or policy change. All right, I can see these wars are a bit unpopular. Should we stop funding them? I can see a lot of you seem to be worried about this border crisis. Should we do something about that? A lot of you seem deeply concerned about the lack of infrastructure, entropy decay, increasing welfare inequality, the inability of the government to meaningfully regulate the defense industry, the inability of the Pentagon to pass its own audits, the inability of the FDA to regulate the pharmaceutical industry. Those are policies. That's not magic. That's something they could do. Oh, there's nothing we can do about the CIA lying and pre-bunking stories so the Hunter Biden laptop story doesn't capsize an election. Magic isn't what's required. Honesty is what's required. Integrity is what's required. Transparency is what's required. Policies that resonate with American people is what's required. If the Democrats can't see that Teamsters in the form of truckers for Trump turning up for the Republicans, even though the Teamsters have gone both ways over the years, but more latterly have generally been in support of Democrats, then they have to acknowledge they don't resonate or reach ordinary working people, and I can see why. Biden, I love the unions, I love black people. Where's the policies that support that? As soon as that train crashes in East Palestine, that it turns out was because of lack of expenditure on labour, lack of expenditure on sick pay, lack of expenditure on trains, and indeed it creates an environmental disaster which suddenly no one bloody well cares about, even though they bang on about climate change as long as it can be utilised to keep you in your home. The problem with the Democrats is not Trump. The problem with the Democrats is the Democrats. And until they're willing to have that conversation, they're going to find themselves locked in a war with someone who understands the type of warfare that they're engaging in better than they do. And when they find themselves attacking their own institutions, which is precisely what they condemned Trump for, their hypocrisy is yet further exposed. Hello there, you awakening wonders. I am interrupting me in order to tell you something very important. It's a message on behalf of some of our sponsors. Are you ready to delve into the realm of self-care and spill the beans on a skincare gem that's as pure as honesty itself? In today's fast-paced world, we face skepticism towards authorities, uncertainty about product origins, and hidden toxins in everyday items causing significant and chronic stress. Do you know chronic stress can fast-track aging, leaving your skin looking old and wrinkly? Studies show that prolonged stress ramps up inflammation, breaks down collagen, and messes with the skin's defenses, all leading to premature aging. Enter Charlize, the antidote to life's toxins, and my #1 toxic-free skincare pick. This luxurious skincare isn't just about appearances. It's about feeling good inside and out. This world may be toxic sometimes, but your skincare doesn't have to be. Most other skincare lines contain, I'm sorry to tell you this, cancer-causing ingredients. Not Charlize though. The entire product line is toxic-free. That's what I love about it. By the way, Charlize products contain tangerine orange peel, which not only promotes immunity and enhances your mood. Look at the mood I'm in. I'm crazy with glee. But it also promotes cell turnover, hydrates and cleanses the skin, and helps improve blood circulation. Better blood flow means more nutrients and oxygen are delivered to your skin, enhancing its natural glow and promoting healthier, younger skin. Are you ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery and luminous skin? Head over to charlize.beauty/brand and unlock a 25%, I can't even believe I'm saying 25% discount with the promo code brand. That's charlize.beauty/brand, promo code brand to get that 25% off. Remember, my friends, trust, transparency, and self-care are the essential elements of a vibrant life. Choose Charlize and choose the path to inner and outer radiance together. Let's get back to our content. Support our partners if you can.
There's no, magic beans that you can grow here that make some beanstalk take us away from all of this.
We get it, yeah, beans, magic spells, beanstalk. I understand there's no magic. If the establishment has done one thing in my lifetime, it has stopped me believing in magic. You don't have to ring that bell any louder.
There's only one way out of this. Pick one. The Democratic Party has picked its nominee.
And there you have it, once again, iterated, enshrined, and verbally espoused. They're saying to you, we're giving you this. Shut up and take it. Well, a lot of people are saying, no, I won't shut up and take it. I'll take this dude who's saying that he's going to dismantle the deep state. I'll take this dude that's saying he's going to mass deport people. By the way, a position on immigration that the Democrats have prevaricated on significantly and moved a lot closer to a Republican position, if the truth be told, in the last 4 years. So, a party without principles can't condemn a man without scruples just because he's winning.
Yes, it's an old guy who is doing practical, normal, and popular things as president and who has a lot to show for it.
Like there's that brilliant war in Gaza that's being militarily supported, and that fantastic war against a nuclear superpower in the form of Russia that everyone loves, and the endless provocation of China, the refusal to address the needs of ordinary Americans while continuing to ensure that wealth inequality continues. Just an ordinary guy doing ordinary business. What on earth's making this demagogue so appealing?
The Republican Party is pretty obviously picking their guy as well. Also an old guy who, for example, cannot say the word Venezuela.
Trump, who they condemn for being crass and brusque and infantile and juvenile, they are condemning now for mispronunciation of a polysyllabic nation and for trashing of institutions. Indeed, you can't win that fight because Joe Biden appears to be in mental decline, and perhaps the only argument you could offer is don't be unkind, don't say stuff. Well, they are willing to do that. The trashing of the institution stuff, they're obviously willing to do that, and they're clearly trying to nullify the ongoing criticism of Joe Biden, even from Democrat supporters, by saying, but Trump mispronounces things as well. Is that it? Is that your vision? Is that what you're offering the young people of America? Is that what people are going to come together around? And here it is, Joe Biden. He may mispronounce stuff, but so does the other candidate. That might not be enough to get people to the ballot box. Pick one. Pick one. I'm picking this one.
Currently riding high on his party's abortion bans and measles-curious virological denialist free associating.
Sorry, Rachel, what was that thing you said about the vaccines again and how effective they were? It was...
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
Rachel Maddow hasn't got a strong pedigree when it comes to the subject of telling the truth to her audience on the matter of vaccines.
He's trying to warm the American people up to the idea of just a little bit of dictatorship from him. And he's getting us ready to, start building camps to hold millions. Because his advisors say the deportations start at noon on day one.
The wall that Trump built is continuing to be built by Biden. The cages that Trump was condemned for were installed by Obama. What is all this hysteria about? What is it? What is the point of difference that they want us to get whooped up about? Imagine for a moment that Donald Trump was in office now and he was supplying a nation with arms to practice a massacre, some would say, others would say a genocide. Imagine if Trump were involved in the ongoing support of Ukraine instead of putting all of America's considerable efforts and might into bringing about a diplomatic solution to a problem that could get a lot worse. If Trump was the candidate of war, you can bet your bottom dollar that all day long, this guy's a warmonger, he's crazy, look at these images of children dying, this is disgusting, this is terrible. Imagine if it had been on Trump's watch that Aaron Bushnell, American airman, had set himself on fire in protest against wars that he felt he was expected to tacitly participate in and maybe physically at some point in the future as they continue to escalate. That image will be everywhere. There'll be t-shirts, there'll be mugs. But can you see Aaron Bushnell on the internet? Someone has spent a lot of money ensuring we don't see that image for some reason. The point of difference is not distinct enough to warrant this hysteria. The truth is that the Democrats and the Republicans are much closer on the subject of immigration than they've ever been. Listen to this. Biden's immigration plans since he took office have been an extension of Trump's, particularly with regard to the southern border. Not content with aping Trump's policies, Biden was desperate enough for a win on immigration that he told Trump on a recent trip to Texas, join me or I'll join you in fortifying the border and making it virtually impossible to apply for asylum. So Democrats have staked retaining the presidency on framing Trump as an existential threat to democracy. But if Trump is such a danger, why are Democrats ceding him so much political initiative? If Biden actually believes he presents the type of threat he and Democrats say he does, why is the president bending over backwards to enact legislation on Trump's signature issue? That's like a simple administrative and legislative matter that demonstrates that what we're listening to here is hyperbole. Pick one. Well, it seems that ultimately, in many significant issues, they're not as different as you are claiming.
The only way this decision will be made is by you picking one. By you volunteering and donating and campaigning and deciding it matters enough to you to not only vote, but to help your candidate try to win.
Their strategy, once again, is to whip up hysteria, panic and fear in their audience in order to create some sort of activism and engagement, when I think a lot of people are feeling quite disengaged, and understandably so, while groping around for policies that placate their acknowledged demographic and supporter base, like, for example, cancelling student debt. And there's an easy argument to be made that why not people who have trained in trades? Why shouldn't people in blue-collar jobs experience the same sort of benefits and advantages? Generally speaking, in the past, I would have thought it was a good thing for students not to be charged for their education. But is that an act guided by principle and righteousness, or is it a cynical attempt to buy voters? And I'd say it's probably the latter, given the obvious similarities between the two parties in a number of significant issues and the hysterical stance taken by their propagandist media outlet.
But the only thing that will stop them is Democrats winning instead. Period. Full stop. Thank you, United States Supreme Court, for the clarification. The campaign.
They're actually angry that the Supreme Court have gone, well, this isn't actually legal, and unanimously decided that it ought be deferred. Oh, thank you, Supreme Court, for not joining in and supporting us and being partisan. Can you imagine the alternative? So what you get is indication after indication, demonstration after demonstration, that there are no principles at play, just partisan hysteria and bombast continually posing as rationalism. But when you actually scrutinize what you're discussing, again and again, the similarities outweigh the differences. If you truly want a different perspective, you have to turn to popular culture. And the figure that defines American culture now, in perhaps the way that Oprah Winfrey once did, is Joe Rogan. He is the defining media figure. His conversations are the conversations that move the needle in American life. And the left have already decided they don't like him and they don't want him. And he's an idiot. Why? Because of his free-thinking willingness to take responsibility for personal health, to have complex conversations about war, to listen to both sides of arguments, all principles that I grew up thinking, like, you know, when the left was Gore Vidal and James Baldwin, were the sort of things that we were supposed to be embracing. But now, the authoritarian left is just some sort of shrill, nasal nutjob nest. A figure like Joe Rogan might as well be Fred Flintstone. Let's have a listen to Joe Rogan saying that what's actually required in our culture is a meaningful spiritual shift. And indeed, how does that feel to you? Doesn't it feel like something significant has to happen? All the while people tell you, do you know your life's better than it ever was? Feels like a spiritual crisis is happening, doesn't it? Listen to what Joe Rogan's got to say.
But I think as time rolls on, people are going to understand the need to have some sort of divine structure to things, some sort of belief in the sanctity of love and of truth. And a lot of that comes from religion.
Seems like Joe Rogan's saying that materialism and rationalism are failing, and MSNBC and their likes are the last bastions of the kind of rationalism that peculiarly grew out of, like, the civil rights movement, or at least it seems to me, carried the mantle of ideas that were really cool and brilliant and necessary at the time, but have become somewhat atrophied and hollowed out, and now are just kind of husks. And what's needed is a revivification and libidinization of American political and spiritual life in order to stop it being just pick one of these. We need a lot more. And what Joe Rogan ends up saying is we need nothing less than the return of Jesus Christ. Now, whether that's a physical return, and Lord alone knows I pray for it, or a return of Christ within yourself, within your own consciousness, is not yet clear. But certainly something significant must happen. And I don't just mean within you as an individual, but if it didn't happen within you as an individual, it wouldn't actually matter if it happened anywhere else, would it? But certainly it has to happen across the culture. And the fact that we're kept within such a narrow framework, I think, is telling. There is no no magic beans. There are no magic beanstalks. There is no magic wand. There is no magic. Don't trust the Supreme Court anymore. Just get out there and vote for Joe Biden, even though on some of the most significant issues, Joe Biden is pretty similar to what the Republicans have previously done. And in some other areas, like ongoing global war, we're not willing to address it. And Joe Biden actually literally goes out of his way to avoid discussing it. And sometimes doesn't tell people where his public appearances are so that he doesn't have to be questioned about it, even though there's been 100,000 uncommitted votes in one primary alone. This is clearly something that even their own voter base want to talk about, whether it's through Marianne Williamson, a candidate that's being ignored, RFK, a candidate that just had to remove himself from the entire party, or Dean Phillips, who's being shut down. The Democrats don't want conversation. They don't want democracy.
A lot of people's moral compass and the guidelines that they've used to follow to live a just and righteous life has come from religion. And unfortunately, a lot of very intelligent people, they dismiss all of the positive aspects of religion because they think that the stories are mere superstitious fairy tales, that, you know, they have no place in this modern world, and, you know, we're inherently good and your ethics are based on your own moral compass and we all have one. And that's not necessarily true. We need Jesus. I think, for real. Like, if he came back now, it'd be great. Like, Jesus, if you're thinking about coming back right now, now's a good time.
I mean, that's a more inspiring message than pick one, isn't it? Like, return, please, Jesus Christ. And particularly if you consider what that might mean, is surrendering your own vanity and ego and sense that your knowledge is the only way that the world can be determined, which is precisely what I'm getting from the neoliberal establishment in the form of MSNBC there, is that there is no hope, that we know everything, that we know what Trump's going to do. Oh, the Supreme Court, forget those old fogies, those old fuddy-duddies. Pooh-wee. They probably poo themselves in those robes. So a return of Christ, a return to meaningful values, a return to love and kindness and service and things that don't make sense in a world that seems to have lost all contact with those kind of values is precisely what's required. And here is Martin Gurri, former CIA analyst and author of the very influential book, The Revolt of the Public, which described how the internet age meant that politics was going to be annihilated because there would be no place for centralized authority now that everyone was empowered to communicate, and new affiliations would form on the periphery, as is happening in real time. You're seeing it everywhere as politicians from the right and pundits from the left and all sorts of peculiar triangulations are taking place. Martin Gurri was the first person that said this would happen, and here he's explaining why the hysteria around Trump is completely invalid. It's a brilliant piece, and coupled with what Rachel Maddow tells you to do, shut up and vote Biden, what Joe Rogan asked for, a return to, well, he says literally Jesus, spiritual awakening, you can put that into your own language. We can add to that this insight around why the neoliberal establishment are determined to portray Trump so negatively, and this makes a lot of sense to me. You'll like it. The word most often associated with Trump is authoritarian. From the New York Times, Atlantic and Economist to The Guardian, Vanity Fair and Politico, we are told with ritual repetition that Trump is the second coming of Hitler or Mussolini. Interesting, given the kind of language. He's being portrayed as a kind of demonic force, a kind of devil. But what is more demonic now? Isn't it politics itself? Isn't it these set of inert systems that seem incapable of serving us? An aspiring dictator eager to herd his opponents into the great American gulag.
And he's getting us ready to, start building camps to hold millions.
Naturally, people panic. I want to calm them down. They don't want you calm or sensible or rational. Using as few words as possible, I'm going to show that the combination of Trump and authoritarianism is impossible. What kind of person becomes an authoritarian? Well, it may look like fun, but authoritarianism is really hard work. You need to be in the prime of your life, in your 30s or 40s. Lenin, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Franco, Mao, Castro, we're all in that age bracket. Very rarely an exceptional person such as Caesar is granted literal dictatorship. The Romans invented the whole idea in his early 50s. In a clear case of ageism, however, no septuagenarian has ever been offered the job. Now, Martin Gurri turns his attention to the subject of January the 6th. Is Trump an authoritarian? Could Trump literally instill a dictatorship, as the neoliberal establishment are suggesting? Or is that an impossibility because of the very institutions that, in fact, Rachel Maddow is there decrying, like the Supreme Court, and various other institutions and bureaucracies that are there precisely to ensure that person doesn't go, excuse me, I'm in charge now, we're not going to have any more elections. That's actually, I don't think, possible within the American Constitution. Still, I know what some political depressives will be thinking, and they're wrong. January 6th was not an insurgency aiming to install Trump as chief authoritarian. In an insurgency, people with guns shoot at each other, and lots of them die. In the firefight to convert Augusto Pinochet into El Supremo, 3,000 Chileans died. That's an insurgency. On January 6th, only one person died, a young woman who was shot by a Capitol policeman while trying to break through a door into the House chamber. She was unarmed, as was the rest of the trespassing mob. There is no such thing as an unarmed insurgency. We are being continually presented with images that simply do not make sense, I believe, in order to simply augur ongoing establishment power and control and prevent us from demanding what we really should have, more direct and representational systems of government that are actually in the control of the people affected by them. As it continually says in the comments under there, there's nothing worse than having decisions made by people who are not affected by the outcome of those decisions. I might have got it wrong, let me know in the chat. You won't hurt Trump by calling him authoritarian. He's like one of those bull elephant seals covered with a hide inches thick and full of scars. Authoritarianism won't even reach his sensory apparatus. But tens of millions of Americans voted for the man. If you insist that Trump is an authoritarian, if you continue to maintain that he's the greatest threat ever to our democracy, then you're portraying these voters as goose-stepping bigots. They're continually doing that. That is one of the errors, I think, that has been made since 2016 in American political and media life. And you know full well that they're not. They're your family, friends, and neighbours. People in these categories may not be as reliably helpful as, say, a good dog, but only rarely are they involved in overthrowing constitutional norms. So relax. Trump is too old, too isolated, and too ADD to have a shot at dictatorship. And if he tried, the result would be comedy rather than tyranny. You still want to join the ranks of the anti-Trump resistance? Hey, that's wonderful. You want to do battle against authoritarianism? I'm there with you. Just don't mix up the two. I promise it will make you clearer of mind and healthier of body, and it will free us to begin to call our politicians by those vile names that actually fit. I admire Martin Gurri and his writing very deeply, and I think that what this article in fact points to is that there is a deliberate attempt to generate hysteria, because if you were calm and rational when looking at these issues, you would simply see there isn't much to get hysterical about. And what the neoliberal establishment media has to do is sort of grind enthusiasm out of you using colourful metaphors, even abandoning institutions that they claim to care about when it's convenient, in order to galvanise an audience that is radically losing interest. In fact, once again, it's Joe Rogan who has a clearer understanding of what's required politically and cultural in American life, and that is a return to values. You may not be a Christian, you may not even be religious, but surely what we can all agree on is that there's some consistent values and principles are precisely what's required to bring America together, even if that means decentralising America. That what we require is a focus on the issues that actually affect people, particularly people that are dying right now across the world, in order to perpetuate an economy that requires war in order to sustain itself, and nobody's allowed to discuss it. And this guy that we're told by MSNBC is business as usual and doing a great job is ignoring that, facilitating that, and not addressing that. So yes, I think we do need a return of Jesus Christ. That's what I'm praying for personally. And we need clarity, honesty, open-mindedness, and real alternatives in the political space. Where shall we look for them? Let's talk about it together. Is it Trump? Is it RFK? Is it Marianne Williamson? Is it Cornel West? I'd certainly like to see some new independent movements challenging these old institutions. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and chat? Remember, click the link, join our movement and support us. More important than that though, if you can, please stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.